My name is Mark. I'm actually right now I'm president of Intelex, but I've been CEO of Intelex for the last 20 years, and we sold the company back in June, so I did a transition on that. And so I'm going to be your high trust medium performance example today. So hopefully that'll serve me right. High trust in that. I think I even made a typo on this. So learnings from we just sold the company for $767 million back in June. So boom. I'm going to try to encapsulate the story of that in 5 minutes. It's not easy to do, but basically, so what I'm going to talk about today really doesn't matter compared to this. And basically, this is what sells your company for $750 million. It's going through this growth. So this is Intelex's revenue from 2002 or so. The little bar at the front is 500K. I didn't put the numbers in here because we're now a publicly traded company, but you can get the idea that we've done really well for ourselves. And most of that time was being bootstrapped. We were bootstrapped up until 2015. We're about 50 million in revenue at that time. Never took $1 of investment prior to that, and that's a whole story for another day. But if you could do that, do that. That is the best thing you could ever do. And we all raise of the month. Woo! It's not a victory to raise money. Don't be excited or proud of yourself for doing it. That is not the goal. That is not why we're here. You could argue the goal is either going IPO or selling your company to a strategic. To me, that's kind of what I looked up as my job was for the last 20 years, and so I've kind of gotten there. But don't look at it as raising money. That's a means to an end. Or the goal is to, have a lifestyle business that you grow over the years. I've done 2 transactions during that time. I don't know what everybody talks about, Series A's and Series B's and so on. I guess my Series A was in August 2015. We raised $160 million. We didn't use a banker at that time. We found 9 targets. We went after those 9 targets. We got 9 LOIs. And really, that was a private equity deal. We did deal with private equity. And so the focus was metrics and metrics that backed our story. This deal back in June was maybe our Series B. It was a full sale of the company back in June to a strategic. So it was an industrial conglomerate Fortune 500 company that we sold to. Fortive is the company. It's a Fortune 450 or so. But what we did was we had 3 targeted industrial conglomerates, all Fortune 500 businesses. You would know the names of all of them. And this was a pitch around story being backed by metrics. And there's a whole lot of learnings between selling to private equity or raising money with private equity versus raising money with strategics. Basically, private equity is super fast and efficient. Strategics very slow and process methodical. Small groups, private equity. Huge group strategic. We had one of the buyers had 200 people in our data room. Crazy town. Focus was on metrics with private equity, and strategics focuses on the story. With private equity, the buyer has questions and the buyer has answers. You can spin it, but the buyer's digging in. With strategics, the seller, you're really giving them the story. With private equity, CEO and the team is really important. When you go into strategics, it's all about governance, controls, and compliance. And with private equity, when you're selling, it's a lot of game theory. And with strategics, it's a lot of work, meetings and data requests and so on. So I'm not going to talk about raising the raise. I'm going to talk about selling the company or really getting the company bought. And so really, first off, I'm going to start with why. And it was back in November last year when I spoke last time at TechTO. And at that time, we didn't hit our numbers in 2018, so we weren't stoked on that. The numbers were still pretty good, but we weren't as excited. And what we were doing is really looking at what is it that we can do to make a step change for our 3 stakeholders in the business: our employees, our customers, and our shareholders. And we're looking at, in our business, what is the biggest challenge for our business? We're a SaaS business. We have an enterprise platform for environmental safety and quality management. It's like Salesforce.com, if you will, for who's doing what, when, where, why, how well on the environmental impact of a business and the safety impact of a business. So are people getting hurt? Are people doing work instructions, processes, procedures? We have over 1,600 customers, over, 4 million users. Our customers range from the biggest Fortune 500 companies in the world that you'll know of. But the challenge there was we have program management, the SaaS who's doing what, when, where, why, how, But what's happening, the real impact out there is with the workforce, and it's with the assets, the machines, and the equipment out there being used. Basically, what's happening in real life is not talking to our system. And that was the biggest challenge, but also the biggest opportunity. The biggest opportunity was to connect what's happening in the data management side with what's happening out in the real world. And really, the idea was that IoT was an opportunity to completely change our business and our market. And we were like, we need to lead the IoT revolution in what environmental health and safety quality system space. The problem is we're uniquely positioned to lead that revolution, but we can never own it. Because that equipment, those assets, the personal protective equipment, hard helmets to the process equipment and machinery to the facilities, all of the things out there that have an impact on employee safety and environmental impact, we're never going to own that stuff. That is like Fortune 50 company type stuff to own. But we have the ability to tie all the data that comes together with that into something meaningful and impactful to businesses. So we came up with a project we called Project Homerun. And basically the idea was to approach what we knew the most safety-oriented and environmental-oriented industrial conglomerates and the people who sell process control equipment, facility construction equipment, safety helmets, harnesses, gas detectors, that kind of stuff, and pitch them a data management platform as the future of their businesses. Basically, they have the equipment that they can connect through IoT. We have the platform to turn that data into context or give context to that data that adds massive value to them, and it's a tool to transform their business. So we basically had that idea, that story, and we went out to market, and fortunately we have already established a bunch of partnerships. And so back in November, we started up with this plan. Back in January, we went to these partners we already had and kind of started talking about this vision of what we call a digital nervous system for EHSQ. And we selected the IoT vendors and these industrial conglomerates we wanted to go after. And we picked a few of them. We didn't want any private equity, no financial firms in the process. And we went after them for a 6-month process. And so just like this is basically the process we went through. More or less, first off, it took 20 years to build a great company. Then it took 3 years to build these partnerships. And over those years, we kind of rejected overtures from these partners being like, yeah, what if we could buy you? And we're like, no, 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 no. I remember specifically one of the meetings they came in and they're like, can we buy you guys? And I'm like, well, for $1 billion I'm talking, but otherwise not interested. And they're just like, okay, finally walked away. But we kind of batted our eyes and flirted with them for a couple of years. And we waited until we had multiple overtures. And once we had those multiple overtures, we kind of back-channeled back, through third parties and stuff. Well, maybe Intelex would kind of, if you guys really have a big number in mind, if you really have an aggressive concept, yeah, maybe they'd listen. But I would never say that directly. And after that back-channeling of indication of interest, we started that campaign back in January 2019 and started developing FOMO, fear of missing out, amongst our partners. And our partners are like, oh, shit. These guys are going to buy them. And they're all kind of competitors. They all know each other. And so they're like, oh, shit, we better get involved. So they're calling us and saying, hey, we want to make an offer. And we're, no, we don't want an offer. We're not interested. But we're like, you know what? Maybe we would engage in a process. And what we did was we aligned the partners around when we were like, okay, you know what? We would sign an NDA with you. We would tell you, we would show more. We're not interested at all in selling, but we'll sign an NDA and you can look under the tent a little more. But we aligned all those NDAs it took us about a month from January to align those NDAs. And during that time, they're like, well, we want to give you an offer. We want to give you an offer. We're like, nope, we're not interested. We rebuffed all the offers. But then we were also like, okay, this is serious. We've got, at the time we had 2, and then the third was right behind him. And so we kept on rebuffing those indications, but we got a banker. And then we said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to hold management processes in Toronto, or presentations in Toronto. If you're interested, show up. If you're not, don't. Who cares? And we were kind of looking at who was going to show up. All 3 of them took the private jet and brought senior leaders from the company, all there. I had like 15 people in the room, and I got to do an hour-long pitch on our story for the digital nervous system for EHSQ. Fucking killed it. Yeah, I'll remember that for the rest of my life. Then we waited for feedback. We're like, yeah, whatever, we're cool, it's whatever, we don't care. And so they were like, oh, we want to submit offers. We want to submit. No, we're not really interested in offers. And part of my story, my learning process here is we never saw a number. We saw numbers twice. We saw a number on the day that we said, okay, we'll accept indications this day, and we saw numbers on the very last day. And that was it, the only time. It was the whole time we're like, no, we're not interested, don't want to see numbers. But we did say, hey, look, you know what? If you're interested, why don't you send us an indication on this date? Your indication an indication of value. It should be enough that we're like interested to go forward with. And we're like, okay, we aligned everybody with that date. We got all of our indications and got numbers from everybody, a whole spread, gave them zero feedback and said, you know what? You're not in the running, but we will do diligence with you. So signed up all 3 in diligence, and we ran 3 diligence processes with 3 Fortune 500 industrial conglomerates at the same damn time, which was insane. We literally had 1,000 requests for data from each of them. The process of running 3 simultaneously is painful as hell. But we put a tight timeline on it, and we're like, okay, we're not going to talk money right now, but we will do diligence with all of you. We're going to grind, did that, but we said we're going to take best and final offers on this date. We put that date out there. We kept grinding diligence. And the date came. It took about 6 weeks from management presentations to that date. And if you have any idea about these strategics, like I literally met with CEOs of all of them, like going down pretty cool, and said, no, this is the date. If you're interested, we just can't waste any more time with the company. If you have a number then that we're interested in, we'll take it. And then that day came. We got 3 indications. It was auction day. We negotiated. We came up with a number that was a number we were pleased with. And we locked in one of them. It took 48 hours to sign what's called a sale purchase agreement, an SPA, all the legal terms around purchasing the company. It took us a month to get regulatory approval, so there wouldn't be any monopoly. And then we had financial close on June 2019. So that was about a 6-month process. It's pretty hardcore, and it's crazy. And then it all resulted in Intelex being acquired by Fortive and Industrial Scientific. Fortive is actually a Danaher company, if you've heard of Danaher. These are industrial conglomerates that make stuff that you probably don't know of, but it's the things that build the manufacturing companies behind those companies. And basically, these are some big companies. And so the transaction was $570 million US dollars. On that day, it was $767 million. I like using the 767 number better than the 570 number. But still, either way, it was like, boom. If you think of it, so the company is actually older. I started the company 21 years ago. We were like 2 or 3 little employees. We went through there's a whole story between this and this. But it's just amazing the accomplishment of the team and the company and what they built to allow us to do that. So, tons of lesson learned. First lesson learned is, unless you are like being pulled into this process now, forget everything. This is like a cool story for you to know about. But this is like, for the 21 years I've been part of the company, I worried about this for 1 year. The other 20 years, we built a great company, and that was the focus. We never focused on selling it. To be honest, if I was you in the audience right now 3 years ago, I'd be like, look at that loser just sold his company. That was my attitude, and I'm slightly embarrassed talking about how I sold my company, because I was like, no, I'm going to build this thing. It's going to be the biggest company in the universe. But things happen where you have to do what you got to do. So don't distract yourself with this. It's a cool story, but don't distract with it. But if you have to, if you really are interested, metrics first, metrics second, metrics third, metrics fourth. It's all about driving your bookings, driving retention targets, driving earnings. By the way, earnings are important. And all of you, like if you have a business that's based on like user growth or something like that, I don't know about that stuff. I know what matters to companies, strategics, is revenue, earnings, growth, retention. And if you want a home run, it's about the power of the combination. What does your company plus an acquirer, strategic acquirers do, combine them together? What is that? What does 1 + 1 = 3 or 1 + 1 = 10? Think of it as, in our case, we were a bolt over, not a tuck in. We were like, hey, our company turns your company into a way bigger strategic play than it is today. And then during the process, don't talk numbers, competitive tension. It's all about that. So life afterwards, to me, for our employees, so my focus has always been on our 3 stakeholder groups: our employees, our customers, and our shareholders. For me, the employees have been set up in an organization that's massive stability, massive career growth. There's a huge value prop alignment with our ownership to what the company's trying to do. The employees of our company have been set up for success and growth in the long term. Our customers, they've got a huge increased value prop. I mean, we're actually now taking our SaaS platform, integrating it with all the equipment they already have out there in the field. So huge value prop. They get stability, huge global breadth, a lot of resources, and so on. So big value add for our customers. And then for our shareholders, it's a big win. It's a clean exit for shareholders, and it's a high-profile deal. Everybody was stoked. So, my stakeholders, these are my bosses. And hopefully this deal did right on all those people. So I was pretty happy with that. Now for me, I kind of did my job. This was my job for 21 years, and it's weird to get. It's really weird. It's really weird to get to a point in your career you're like, I did my job. It's done. And so I actually announced last Monday that I'm going to be transitioning out of the business. Next Friday is my last day in the company, which is really crazy weird. But then I'm going to help others because I'm as passionate as these guys, and maybe not as uplifting, but I'm passionate as these guys about the community and the Toronto ecosystem. So honestly, I'd love to help you anybody in the room if you need some assistance in how to, I'd like to find ways to give back and help other companies. I'm going to eat, sleep, travel, repeat, and then I'll start something up new in a year or so. But really, that was when do you get a chance in your lifetime? The job I literally spent 21 years to do, and a whole team of people that I was able to work with just were able to accomplish that job. So very grateful for everybody who is around us to be able to do that. All right, and that is it. I went over time. Apologize. Thank you very much. My name is Mark.
Everyone up. I'm going to ask the first question. It's not a fair one. What's the one thing you would do different in that 21 years? No pressure.
There's lots of things I'd probably do differently. I would have changed the management of my cap table differently, and that's a story I shouldn't talk about publicly. But any of you who are early stages in a startup, you should seek the advisement of somebody who's gone through the war of dealing with cap table over the years. That's a big job. Cap table is your basic ownership structure.
Yeah, we can talk cap tables over drinks tonight.
You know that?
Yeah, I know it a bit too well.
Hey, over here. To your left. How are you? Right here in front of you. Thank you.
Yes.
Great story. Question, when you're going through the process of selling and you said 3 years ago you wouldn't have sold, were there other people in the company that were not on the same boat, and did you have to convince other people to do what you ended up doing?
No, everybody was in. There's a group of. At the start, there was 2 of us who knew. As it progressed, there was 3, 4, 5, and so on. Everybody was 100% aligned that this was the best opportunity for our company moving forward. There was always this idealistic passion of we're going to go public. Everybody liked the idea of going public. The dynamics in our market was somebody was going to take advantage of this IoT opportunity, and it should and needed to be us. And so we went for it. Being able to sustain our business and be a publicly traded company without a solution for that was not possible, and everybody was in agreement that this was the best thing for our employees and for our customers.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
Great story. Thanks for sharing. What advice would you give for an aspiring entrepreneur in the tech space at a startup stage on intellectual property? You
know what? Honestly, I wouldn't sweat it. I wouldn't sweat it until so obviously there's different spaces. If you're a pure technology play, not a solution, but a technology that drives solutions, then I think IP is important. But for a solution provider like us, IP was not important whatsoever. Never filed under patent, never had a patent, and would never have gone back and sweated that. So now if you talk to, what's his name from RIM, he used to get on me, I can't remember his name right now, but he used to ride me for not getting patents. I think it's, this is not legal advice, but for me, it wasn't an important part of the equation. Sorry for anybody who provides patent services in here.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I work in I work for a cannabis startup company. So anyone in cannabis?
Sweet.
Here? Yay!
Hey.
I just want to say, big fan of yours. This is the first time I've heard you speak, and I love the passion, and you just seem super authentic, and you're like my total spirit animal right now. And I'm just loving the vibes you're putting down, and can't wait to see what you're on to next.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Honestly, I think I think if you're going to be a leader building an organization of scale, I went from having 3 employees to 500 plus employees and everything between that. Honestly, if I was to give you one piece of advice, be authentic. Like, you're never gonna have the knowledge, the experience, anything. Like, I started Intelex when I was 21. I'm 42 now. I spent more of my life in Intelex than I have non-Intelex, and the only skill I have in the world is not being very good at lying to people.
Well, one last question. Did we scare everyone?
Oh.
Okay.
Thanks. You seem to be very upfront and direct. Did you get a lot of times people telling you just sugarcoat stuff and be less honest?
So it's a good question. This has been the most challenging year of my life because you can't do this in public. You can't do it by being authentic and open. And so I've actually kind of been hiding in a way for like that, because there's a lot of steps in this process and going through this process. And I've always been a person that I just talk about everything about all the time. Like, there really isn't much stuff that needs, besides somebody's compensation, there's nothing that I really need to hide from people. And this has been a very challenging year and for me, because I really couldn't disclose much about anything. And so this was really the only time of like all of my time that I couldn't be forthcoming with people about what I was doing.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.